This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience. David Housel described it best. We are living the whole of the Auburn experience. You can quantify it and qualify it in a variety of different ways, through different people's lives, through different places, through different experiences. But at its heart, at its core, it's all about the sports, the Auburn culture, and the Auburn family. Because it is about family, we got to have those members of that family here. I'm your host, Kyle, alongside me as well in chair number 2, my co-captain and yours, Mr. Austin Scott, the king of the corn dogs, at least last episode.
War Eagle Kyle. No snacks tonight. I have no shark, rebel, black bear, elephant, crimson tide snacks readily available. But it was 2 wins for the Auburn basketball team. We'll talk about that and plenty more, I'm sure.
You know what would have been a great win for you tonight is to have had another corn dog, but then like already bitten it into the shape of a shark and then just be snacking on it. Listen, you're a very creative person, and I wouldn't put it past you. I mean, when you surprised me with the corn dog last week, I that was well played, sir. So I kind of come ready every single episode of what are you going to throw at me next? And you always, I'm never disappointed, because this is why you're the best co-captain and co-host of the show. I must want something out of you if I'm being this nice.
We're buttering me up, so something's coming.
Something is coming.
But that's very kind of you, and I greatly appreciate that.
All right, let's talk a little Auburn potpourri to start off the show. This is where we bounce around to just a bunch of different topics before we get into our main discussions this evening. Let's talk about probably, as of doing this recording, the most big and recent news: the retiring of the number 24 for Auburn women's basketball. And why are we talking about that? That is for one DeWanna Bonner, who is now, always was, frankly, but will forever be etched in history as an Auburn legend. Having your number retired, raised up into the rafters, there is no higher honor that you can achieve for your school as a basketball player. And now she is part of that. The legacy of Vicky Orr, of Ruthie Bolton, Joe Champy, and many more. DeWanna Bonner is now officially part of that Auburn legendary history. And I mean, I couldn't be happier for her.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's something I think that has probably been a long time coming. Something we've all obviously known of DeWanna as being a proud alum of Auburn women's basketball. And it's very special for her today. Kyle, my question to you is, does DeWanna Bonner have her name in the conversation of that first women's athletic statue?
Oh, she has it in the conversation, but I don't know that she has
some long shots.
There's some tough, tall names that you've got to overcome in terms of, the Ruthie Boltons, the ones I talked about, Vicky Orr's, the nun, Susan Nunnally. I mean, I think in terms of
what a great statue that would be.
That, because of what she's meant to women's basketball. It's a great question. And, one day when this campus is just filled with statues, we're going to get to DeWanna Bonner, I'm sure. But even if she never got a statue, your jersey is hanging up there. Every time that you come back as a visitor, no longer a player, but a visitor, you're going to look up and see your number and know that not one more single player has ever touched that number. I mean, that's for me as a former basketball player, that's like the stuff of dreams for your school, no less. So huge honor for DeWanna Bonner. Obviously, we are super excited for her and happy that we got to have her back on the plains here recently. A little bit of football news that I'll bring up here. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more coming down the pipe soon. We are finally so close to completing the staff. We took another step towards that this past week. It was very early on in the week as we're kind of getting into the start of a new week. New offensive coordinator for Auburn, OC Derek Nix. No matter what Mr. Lane Kiffin says, he is now officially part of the Auburn family. And listen, I love me some Lane Kiffin from time to time. He finds a way to put his foot in his mouth, which is why I love having him around. But hey, listen, it's all part of the game, in my opinion. We won, though. Again, we won when it came to Lane Kiffin.
That's right. Yep. Derek Nix hired, despite his best attempts from his head coach to be retained, former head coach to be retained at Ole Miss. A guy Hugh Freeze wanted, and a guy he's familiar with, a guy who's been at Ole Miss for a very long time, has decided to move away from Oxford and come be the offensive coordinator at Auburn. So I'm extremely excited about him. I think it's another big step for Hugh Freeze with culture, another big step for a staff that he believes in, and the staff that he believes can do what he wants them to do. And hey, it doesn't help that he's on the recruiting trail and getting some big names too. So really excited for him, really excited for Auburn and the future it holds with Derek Nix as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, there's something to be said for bringing in quote unquote your guy, right? And
Yeah.
when we say something like that, someone you have a history with, someone that you have a lot of familiarity with, who knows what your expectations are, but also knows what type of offense you probably prefer. And so whether it was in the conversations we've had previously about whether Philip, Montgomery, former OC, was running the right things or not, or just wasn't a good mesh, whatever, that's not even a point anymore. There will be no question of, well, there shouldn't be any question of alignment, a big buzzword that was being thrown around before he even was hired as that process was coming down to a conclusion. That shouldn't be an issue with Derek Nix, but a new addition to the coaching staff and one that we're excited to see happen, even if it's at the expense of one Lane Kiffin. And we'll see how that animosity between Ole Miss and Auburn continues to build a little bit more these days. I enjoy the heck out of it. Do you think they have achieved like not an honorary rival status, but are kind of working their way towards that the way things have been going?
I would have said yes until we don't play them next year. Like that's up in the air now. And so I think that's going to kind of damper things, I think. But I mean, as we'll talk about later, there's plenty of other spots with Auburn and Ole Miss. There seems to be different points of ribbing. Alan Green ended up there for a little bit. Alan Flanagan and Wes Flanagan are on the basketball roster now. It's definitely built up to be one of those. I wouldn't even put it on the LSU level of Auburn rivalry, really. No. But I mean, when you're talking about rivals, you got Alabama, Georgia, and then you're down to the LSU level. We're already putting Ole Miss under that, and so it's a hard totem pole to climb up. But I mean, now when you compare them to Mississippi State and other schools in the SEC, I'm like, well, yeah, I have much more animosity toward Ole Miss. Wouldn't you say?
I would say that. I would definitely put them in like a tier unto themselves. For us, you've got the Alabama, the Georgias, the LSUs. I'd even still throw Florida up in there, even though we barely get to see them in football, just because of the history there. Tennessee probably could make an argument up into that group somewhat too. But then there's like your Ole Miss, who's got enough history with us past that whole Tuberville connection, all that stuff. I mean, Hugh Freeze came from there to us. And then the recent history of everything else, even outside of football, I think it's developed into not even a rivalry, but just an animosity that continues to grow with each shenanigan, shall we say.
Well, and let's remember, folks, no matter how much Lane Kiffin wants to get on the Tweeter bird and talk about all these things, X, talk about all these things he wants to do and be petty and act like a little child. This was the first time ever Ole Miss beat Auburn in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah, took a little bit of time.
Ever.
Yeah.
Just don't bring them up to our level just yet. Just don't. Let's keep them in their place. We'll keep them in their aquarium or their bear trap or their. I don't know where.
I don't know where else you can go with that, but I mean, it's confusing enough for them. Don't let it confuse.
It is. Right.
It is what it is. Let them be confusing. Other thing I want to bring up tonight, a bit of a surprise this week as we build towards the spring sports season and baseball getting started. Baseball said, you know what? I see football, I see basketball, both men's and women's having some fun. Why don't we make a little bit of splash is the right word, but a statement. And we decided to announce, like I'm on the staff or something, the baseball account put out on social media a surprise addition to the outfield viewing portion of Plainsman Park, where students and any fans really can walk up and, grab an open spot there. Good luck to you with some of the shenanigans that happen back there from time to time. and watch the game from that vantage point. I've stood back there for a couple of innings and not had a terrible time back there in terms of viewing the game. It's a little bit tough because you're eye level. But now, Austin, we're apparently going to have some type of structure. You and I were trying to figure out pre-show what to call this, but it will be an enhanced viewing ability from that outfield section with presumably no ticket needed to be purchased. Your thoughts on this surprising news?
Yeah, pretty interesting. We, like you said, we don't quite know exactly what it is. I'm sure more information will come out, but Auburn baseball tweeted out their progress pictures of building some raised seating. It looks like Kyle and I are thinking maybe it's a little patio out there for students and non-ticket holders to view. Now, Kyle, I think it's very ironic though, because I'll tell you one of my first things I thought of I think it's ironic that you said Auburn baseball made a splash, because all I can think about is that this is a higher raised area for us to have frat boys jump into the pool, the inflatable pool out there that you and I've discussed when home runs are hit.
This is what we've asked. I'm looking for it, especially in January. February really is when they get really going. In February, in that early part of March, I'm calling on the fraternities, if it's still allowed, and you put the pool out there every time a home run is hit. Please, I need to see some pledge jumping in there.
I agree.
And here, this may get a little bit weird, me saying this, double points if it's in a Speedo. Like, I'm just going to throw that out there.
I'm for it.
In the cold, and triple points if it's 40 degrees or less out there and you do it at nighttime.
Let's stick a diving board on this structure and go. I'm ready.
Now we're just getting crazy. Look, they surprised us enough with new seating out there, or just viewing options out there, that we weren't expecting to be part of this renovation. Let's not add things that are going to make it more complicated. It'll be interesting to see how this changes the perspective out there. Of course, we'll go out and check it out once that time comes, as baseball season slowly approaches. That's going to do it for Auburn Potpourri. We got two major topics to discuss: a little bit of Auburn men's basketball update that is very much warranted the way they've been playing. And then we're going to talk about the announcement of the A-Day dates and the events that'll be happening all around it. But first, we got to talk to you about our friends at Magic Mind. Now, we've been getting really acquainted with them, and they are synonymous with the word energy, something that is essential for everybody. But for myself, being a content creator, I have got to have the right source of energy. What I mean by the right source of energy, that energy that doesn't just, you get it and then you just go off a cliff, essentially, in terms of those sugar rushes or whatever that aren't really necessarily good for you. So there are alternatives out there. One of those is our friends at Magic Mind. And I can tell you, after personally trying it myself, that their claim is true, that they can help defeat burnout and elevate your mental health. They give you all the benefits of some of those other energy shot or drink alternatives out there, but with none of the bad stuff. They'll help improve your mental focus, help you make you more productive in a more prolonged and healthy, natural way. Magic Mind has all natural ingredients, including, for those of you that have these type of sensitivities, being sugar-free or nut-free, or if you're on a special diet, vegan diets, paleo, keto diets, it's compatible with all that. So if you're interested, check it out by going and visit them at www.magicmind.com/Jan. That's Jan, Jan Auburn, and use the code Auburn, AUBURN, for 56% off a subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase. Make sure you do go check that out. Again, that link is magicmind.com/Jan Auburn. Use the code Auburn for 56% off or 20% off that one-time purchase. Austin, basketball season is beyond its halfway point now, I think is fair to say, right? We're well into
shooty hoops.
Excuse me. I have to use the correct term, especially when we're playing like we are. Shooty hoops is about halfway through the season. And some would say that Auburn basketball is in mid-season form, is in postseason form at this point. Some would say they're scared we're peaking too early. That's how well things are going right now. Frankly, Auburn being 5-0 in SEC play the night of us recording this, more games coming up this week that could change that, but we'll change it in a positive way too. But that's impressive. That's wins over Texas A&M, over LSU, ranked Ole Miss. I
Old.
always slip into saying that sometimes. I don't feel bad about it, but it's just funny that it kind of slips out that way sometime. 5-0 in SEC play, pretty good results in non-conference play, which sets up Auburn as one of the best teams in college basketball now, and everyone is finally starting to notice it. The commentators, the rankings people, everything in between. How does it feel?
Oh, it's incredible. I think you couldn't have asked for a better start, obviously, when you're 5-0 to conference play for Auburn basketball, but the way they've done it, double-digit wins all over the place, dominating wins on the road and at home. It's been incredible to see how this team has gelled together. This team works really well. Doesn't matter who's sharing the points for the night. Doesn't matter who's going off on which night. The team is just finding ways to win and is doing it pretty consistently. So really exciting. I don't think they've truly been tested yet. I think the schedule's about to get tougher. And we're about to see kind of where this team is at when they're playing some people more on their level. I know Ole Miss was ranked. I'm not sure Ole Miss should be ranked. I'm not sure they should have been ranked ever. But I think we're about to see where this team is at and get a bigger or a better specific understanding of just how good they are. This team's good. They're about to be one of the top 10 teams in the country come tomorrow morning. However, we're about to see where the kind of rubber meets the road and some teams get more on their level competitively. So you couldn't ask for any better if you're Bruce Pearl and the staff. And that's something Bruce Pearl, everything I just said is something Bruce Pearl has been very consistent on. It's tempering expectations. Losses are going to happen in college basketball.
Right.
Auburn is not about to go all the way through April and win every game.
True.
But they probably don't need to. However, it's really exciting where they're at right now. I can't wait to see where they're at. 2 big games this week. I'm excited to see.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm trying to wrestle with here is what is working so well? Like, is it one specific thing that has transpired to really crank that notch up? Because they weren't playing bad to start off the season. If you remember, they took Baylor all the way down to the wire, and had they made some free throws, we might be talking about that as their signature win of the year. Baylor having for most of the year so far been ranked ahead of them. And then the App State thing, that's shown that they can be susceptible. But even since that loss, it's like the dial was cranked up, and it was this team realized maybe their potential. Can you pinpoint one thing or something that you think is the biggest reason why they're having so much success currently?
I think it's really cliche, but when you look at the leading scorer last night having 13 points, everybody's okay with the minutes they're playing. Everybody's okay with the touches they're getting. Everybody's okay riding whoever's the hot hand that night. And I don't want to sound all, emotionally and cliche about Auburn and that everybody loves everybody, but I think they're okay with sharing the love, and they're sharing with who's good, getting how many minutes, who's getting, nobody's feeling like they need to be the hero. Nobody's feeling like they need to be the one taking the shots at, in crucial moments.
Right.
And it works. And I think that is probably the biggest piece of evidence for those guys to keep buying into that mentality is everything's working. Everything is exactly how it should be going. You keep doing this. You keep having this mindset about the team instead of, this group needs to get this many minutes. This group needs to get this many shots. Then I think it's going to keep working. At some point there'll have to be a decision on who's going to take this shot when the game's on the line, or who's going to take this shot when we need this moment. And I think right now we'd probably have a couple of guys we would say are going to, but you can't pinpoint someone exactly right now. I think that helps this team and helps prevent other teams from being able to plan against them.
But if I had to ask you and push you to pick
Jalen Williams.
Oh, wow. That quick.
Jalen Williams. Everything he touches goes in right now. So Jalen Williams.
Listen, I will fight anybody to the death over trying to claim as the biggest Jalen Williams fan. I have had a blast just watching him flourish this season. And it's not often that you tell a player or ask a player to be more aggressive and maybe be a little bit more selfish. And he's found a way to do that and still be Jalen Williams. Folks, last night on the broadcast, the Saturday game for Ole Miss, the ranked victory, The commentators used what has been the hashtag we have been trying to push. Hashtag, well, they said he just does Jalen Williams things. And they said that, and I started screaming. I was like, somebody's listening. Well, they probably just thought of it themselves. They're going to claim it as their own. But hashtag Jalen Williams things. He doesn't just score, folks. He passes the ball well.
Everything.
He does the rebound. I mean, it has been so rewarding as a fan to see someone stick around, do their job, take second fiddle. Folks, he was the backup to Jabari Smith after he was pushing for starting time the year before Jabari got here. You don't see stories like that often. Yeah, you see the great stories of someone taking a back seat and doing it for the team and being honored in some way, but then you don't often see them do that and then become, quote unquote, the star in a sense. So
especially not in today's world, not in today's college sports.
Right. And so to me, the superstar right now is Jalen Williams, but without being Jalen Williams, because he's putting up these great numbers, which we've been all known he's capable of. But then you've got who would be the superstar and is still, in my mind, Janai Broome, because he's got the most NBA prospective talent and future as of this moment. He's kind of taken a back seat. And a lot of the times the trend has been he's just going to have a quiet first half, and then he's just going to turn it on in the second half and just make it impossible for anybody to do anything in the paint with him down there. So it's been fun to watch. Every night, somebody is becoming the guy, and it rotates on a more regular basis. You used to see back when Jabari, it'd be Walker one night, it'd be Jabari one night. And then they'd kind of rotate. But, one night we're talking about Chad Baker-Mazara. The other night we're talking about Jalen Williams. Then it's Janai. Then KD's having the best night. Like it just, I think it's as simple as that. This team is just unselfish, and they're selfish enough to know when someone's got to take the reins. But outside of that, they're just playing good team basketball. Is it just that simple?
It seems like it. It seems like everything's been working that way. And so I don't see why it won't continue to work. At some point there's going to be just some cold nights, I'm sure. But everybody's okay with everybody and taking the shots they want to take right now. Yeah. And I think the more that we hear Coach Bruce Pearl continue to emphasize the unselfishness of this team, the more that it fuels them. So it's exciting.
Yeah. As a last part about our basketball discussion, I do want to acknowledge the one of the bigger storylines of the week, other than Auburn getting a ranked win and being sole possession of the SEC right now. We did welcome back Wes and Alan Flanagan to the Plains from Ole Miss. And to say the reception was warm would be a lie. To say that it was the worst it could have been would also be a lie as well. I would say we've had some questions about this on our own social media and even pre-show here about our feelings on him getting booed and stuff like that. I think where you and I both fall in this is that we feel that there should just be kind of an understanding that there's going to be a little bit of animosity there, but also let's not take it too far. He did not have a great night, nor did anybody else from Ole Miss. So it's not like he was the one that had the bad night. He probably had one of the better nights from the Ole Miss team. We put out a little, post-game score tweet and said, do you think he misses, capital MIMSS, us more than does he miss us more than we miss him? And, people get their feelings all up in a ruffle about that. It's just one of those things like, hey, look, I'm glad to see a Auburn graduate come back. Happy we reminded him who's boss, but it's just a weird little thing,
It is. And we talked about it a little bit together and in pre-show. He went to follow his dad, and he had one last year, and he gave a lot to Auburn, and like you said, he graduated from Auburn. Some mild ribbing is expected. I don't think anything was too bad. We talked about he did have a little bit of a knee scare there for a second, and outside of a couple bozos, everybody was incredibly respectful. So I hope Alan and the Flanagan family enjoyed their trip back home. I hope that they, outside of the basketball game and getting a beat down on them, I hope that they enjoyed everything normally. And, I'm sure Alan wants to beat Auburn. I mean, there's no question about it. He's a graduate, but he wants, of course, why wouldn't you? And so they'll be amped up ready for when Auburn makes the return trip to Oxford. But all in all, Auburn gets the win, and we're okay with it.
And that's all that really matters at the end of it. Auburn is, as of this podcast recording, 5-0 in sole control of the SEC. And no matter what highs or lows come, we're still playing really well right now.
Are they 7-0 next time we record?
Oh, you gonna do this to me?
Yes.
No. I'm gonna say no. Only because
which
one? Oh, well, it'd be Alabama would be the likely one, just because I think they're better than Mississippi State.
What if I told you I'm going to Alabama?
Oh no, you did not get a ticket to that. Oh,
I'm going to the airplane hangar.
The airplane hangar. Well, book your boarding pass and be sure to also make sure you don't get lost in the portals that are continuously open there for
nice,
Alabama.
Nice.
We'll have to get a report back from you next week about your experience there. So that'll be a good little spot for Auburn potpourri next time around. So I'll be looking forward to that.
Yep.
I'm going to be honest with you folks. This one for me is what I'm most excited about. And most of you are like, Kyle, come on. I mean, it's more fun to just talk about football in general. It's more fun to talk about, how the basketball team is doing. The reason that we started E2C Network, the reason that we do the Auburn Experience podcast, the flagship show of everything that we do across our content platform, is about what we preach, living the whole of the Auburn experience. There is no better day when it's done right. And I feel like this is going to be one of those years, barring any monsoons that want to come through again, where a day, yes, but a day weekend is the quintessential Auburn experience. I would maybe say homecoming is probably weekend, may have a run if it's done right and the weather's not terrible, which it might be this year because it's on September 14th, which will be the scorching sun. Don't get me started on that again. That's what we should have talked about in potpourri. That'll be a gripe for another day. A-Day, officially, A-Day weekend, the 5th through the 7th of April. April 6th will be the A-Day game. Folks, what you can expect so far on tap, because they usually have more things going on than this, but in terms of sports, of course, a Saturday, April 6th football spring game, but all weekend, Auburn baseball will be in town, Auburn softball will be in town, and I believe it is men's tennis that will be in town, one of the tennis teams as well. Boys and girls, saddle up. Let's have some fun on A-Day weekend. I am pumped, Austin.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a great weekend. I think that's genius by Auburn to schedule it then. Have as many people around as you can. Pray for beautiful weather, and it'll be a blast, I'm sure. I'm really excited about it. It's not on the Masters weekend. It's not on Easter weekend. Huge win, and we are very excited about that. I hope that tons of people come onto the plains and give plenty of tax dollars for your local residents.
Well, okay. All right. Now listen, no personal plugs right now. Yeah, that's been one of the biggest gripes, is it falling on Easter weekend, on the Masters weekend, because those two things never coincide, right? Like they're always separate weekends. Do I have that correct?
Maybe outside of a couple instances, but yeah, I think so.
So the problem is that you want to get this spring game in the right spot, but you have to find a way to squeeze it either before, after, or in between these two big events that probably don't always coincide on the same weekend. And one obviously more important than the others. I'm not talking about the Masters.
I was about to say that's Easter, folks.
Right. Just in case you were wondering.
Yeah.
But this year, we're not going to have that problem. It's going to be unto itself, Auburn all weekend. And I've long said that I think it's a mistake if it's not possible. I understand, but if you don't have every single Auburn team available on campus that weekend, I know it would make for things hectic scheduling wise and stuff like that. But that's what this should be. To me, this should be the big Auburn event every year. Football season is unto itself. Every game you're going to have a Mecca coming back here, but to be about the Auburn experience, about being an Auburn family, there's no better place to be than here on A-Day weekend, to me at least.
Yeah, when I was growing up, one of my best friends, and still one of my best friends, is a massive Mississippi State fan. They are a big family, big. They all live in Starkville now. It's a big deal. He always talked about growing up. They call it Super Bulldog Weekend, and it's their spring game, but it's always they make sure they have a big baseball series, which baseball's king over there. And then, there was always like a softball weekend or a softball series, of course, and then something else around it. But I always thought, why doesn't everybody do that? Why would you not make something big about and help out these other sports and the programs that don't get the attendance, and just make it as big of a weekend as you can? And so I'm glad that it looks like this weekend could be that super Auburn weekend for Auburn. And I can't wait to see. I hope that there's such a good turnout that becomes more of a regular thing.
Yeah. And listen, sometimes it's tough to schedule everything on the same weekend simply because, especially like track and field. For me, one thing, I know people don't put that on their calendar. Like, I'm not oblivious to that, but I would encourage folks, if it ever lines up to you. I remember one 8A weekend where it was nice to just kind of mosey over there in between things and just go see what's going on. There's some fun stuff happening. And for a program that probably gets one of the fewest pieces of attention to it, that's a great weekend to do that, because it lasts pretty much all day for 2 days, usually maybe a third day if it's a big enough meet. Auburn's got a great facility, Hutzel-Rosen. That's what you want, is an opportunity for people to explore more than just the football, more than just that. So that's what you can expect. Football, baseball, softball, tennis. I wonder if we're going to get, announcements of other things, or will they? I don't know. To me, there's going to be something else, especially with the team of the athletics facility. I forget what their title is. I think it's the fan experience crew now is basically it seems like they've always got something up their sleeve. Could we get another Eagle flight at a baseball game for that weekend?
Smart.
That would be.
Do you know the series? We can do some quick research. Do you know
do
who
the
they're
research?
Playing?
I think it was Ole Miss, which kind of leads into our discussions from earlier in the show about Ole Miss
that would be classic.
Kind of being a more relevant thing for Auburn these days. I don't remember exactly. Austin can look that up.
Remind me the weekend, Kyle.
The weekend would be the 5th through the 7th. And
Tennessee comes to town.
Tennessee for baseball?
So I think you're definitely going to have some surprises that weekend from the fan experience crew. That's a huge series.
Oh man, that is going to be so much fun. The way they've acted up over the last couple of years. Woo-wee.
Let's do a quick research of Auburn softball, but
you should do that.
That's the perfect. You can't ask for many more opponents that you would like to have that weekend, right?
That is true. Alabama would be perfect, but at the same time, but in terms of relevancy to that sport, Tennessee is going to be up there. While you're looking that up, I very rarely take comments from our live recording, but I'm going to, first of all, because he handed out a super chat too. So thank you so much, Thomas. But he brings up a great point. Why not do an all-inclusive ticket for sports on A-Day? Well, first of all, if you do that for the amount that football can accept, you won't be able to have enough space at softball. I can guarantee that. True. And baseball too. But it's not a bad idea to have a certain number of all-inclusive ticket options for that. Boy, would that have everything filled up, because I would 100% take that up, even if it's like a standing room only thing for baseball and softball. Tennis can't hold it all, but tennis is free anyway. So that doesn't really matter, but it's not a bad idea. Would you be up for something like that?
Yeah, when you think about it, A-Day is usually like a max of $10, right? And then 15, maybe something like that.
I think it's still $5 for the
football
game. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's say $5 for all three: Auburn baseball, softball, and Auburn football. You're looking at $15. Maybe you tack on a little extra because it's why not? Because $20, $20 to $25. I think you'd see a lot of people do that, and a lot of people make a weekend out of it. Auburn softball is going to be hosting the War Eagle Classic that weekend, playing Georgia Tech and Louisiana Tech, which should be, not SEC games, but should be a really good competition. Auburn softball is an incredibly intimate atmosphere out there. Yep. So I think that's not a bad ticket idea. I'm wondering if it's something maybe they'll play around with and think about after they see how many people come for a big weekend like this.
So you heard it here first. So when the idea comes around, you heard it on the Auburn Experience podcast, and you're welcome, Auburn administration, for the ideas up there.
Mr. Hobart, you're welcome.
We're just doing the work over here, and no charge whatsoever for all the work.
Just don't make us pay.
That's the charge. We just get him free from now on. That's all we want. I know that's not a huge ask. It really is. But regardless of that, the main thing you guys need to take away from this news this week, the 5th through the 7th, no Easter conflicts, no Masters conflicts. We are all going to be hoping for great weather. When I say great, I'm thinking like a high of 80, low 80s, maybe a high 60s overnight, just clear with the skies with maybe some clouds rolling in at sunset, just sunset over there in the baseball and softball stadiums. Just my goodness. And just talk about a banner day for Auburn Opelika Tourism Board. So we're just doing work for everybody at this point. We're calling upon the weather, everything else. Y'all just ask us and we'll come up with the ideas. With that, that is your A-Day information that you need. I'm sure we'll be talking about that more in the near future. That's going to do it for episode 63 of the Auburn Experience podcast. We've had fun talking about these things. If you want to talk more with me, you can find me on the X at Kyle Loomis 24. Austin, where can they find you?
At Austin G. Scott. Hit me up and tell me what snacks I need for our 2 wins after basketball next week.
So with all that being said, we appreciate you being here with us, hanging out with us, and talking more about the Auburn Experience. Until we talk to you again, War Eagle.
War Eagle.